From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sonia Gray. Israel has passed a controversial law that has defined the country as an exclusively Jewish state, declaring that only Jews have the right to self-determination. The nation-state law declared Hebrew as the official language, stripping Arabic from its status as an official language. The law also defines the establishment of Jewish communities as being of national interest. Many Arab lawmakers condemned the bill, calling it racist and verging on apartheid against the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Israel. They protested in the parliament by ripping up copies of the law.
The nationality bill is a hate crime. They are totally discriminating against the Arab citizens, against the Arab minority, with racist articles, especially those of Jewish settlements, and those articles downgrading the status of the Arabic language.
Unfazed by the protest, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it was a defining moment in the history of Zionism and the State of Israel.
We will keep ensuring civil rights in Israel's democracy. These rights will not be harmed, but the majority also has rights and the majority decides. An absolute majority wants to ensure our state's Jewish character for generations to come.
Now, to understand more about this law and its impact on Palestinians, we're being joined now from Delhi in India by Professor Achin Vanaik. He's a political science professor and a Palestinian rights activist. Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us how significant this law is and what effect it will have on the Palestinians?
Well, this law is a significant acceleration. One must remember that in its own declaration, it had already said that it was a state of the Jewish people. But now, to say explicitly that this is the case, to reduce the status of Arabic to a second language, and to justify the construction of purely Jewish settlements and neighborhoods, this is obviously a clear indication that this government is now determined to put an end to any real possibility of an independent Palestinian state. And even more worrying in many ways, it's a clear-cut rejection of the idea that there can be equal citizenship regardless of religion within Israel. That is to say, it is openly and explicitly rejecting the necessary but not sufficient condition for democracy, which is to be a secular state.
Why do you think that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been so empowered to bring in this legislation now?
Well, I think he's got a lot of encouragement from the support that he has got from the United States of America, because as you know, earlier the United States agreed to the transfer of the capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And this has obviously clearly emboldened Netanyahu. And unfortunately, not just the United States, but a whole number of other countries, including the European Union countries, have given merely lip service and money to the Palestinians, but nothing more than that. Unfortunately, even my own government, the Indian government, has fallen into this pitiful state of lip service to the Palestinian cause and money to the leadership, and that's it.
Can we expand on that a little bit? I mean, we just spoke about the U.S. and the European Union, but the general international response. What has the general international response been to this law?
There have been it's very early to say. I mean, it's just taken place, but I'm sure that there will be expressions of unhappiness and disappointment. But the important thing is that is this going to translate into some kind of a serious pressure from Western governments and their allies against Israel? And I'm afraid in that respect, I don't expect any such thing. They will continue, as I said, to give lip service, but in practice, not to put necessary pressure on Israel.
So what is the next step for the Palestinian people?
Well, the point here is two things. One, of course, is that after the end of the Cold War, we found two things. We found that governments which had earlier given support to the Palestinians shifted ground towards the Israeli government. But as if to compensate for this, we found that in civil society everywhere, in Europe, in the United States, in universities and elsewhere, you found much, much greater support for the Palestinian cause, and even certain Jewish groups recognizing that Zionism was the huge problem and coming out against that. So you've had these two parallel developments here. Palestinians, well, what's going to change the Palestinian situation is you can't separate the Palestinian situation from the larger situation in the Middle East. It only requires one dictatorial government in the Middle East to fall, and that will immediately shift the relationship of forces against Israel and even against the United States. And I think that's what one really has to understand. The Palestinians alone.
Thank you. Really important food for thought there. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Vanaik. Other news now, the OAS Council held an extraordinary session to discuss the situation in Nicaragua. They had harsh words for the government.
The Permanent Council of the OAS issued a powerful statement about the situation in Nicaragua.
A favor.
The document contained 8 points condemning the acts of violence, repression, violations of human rights, and abuses. It was a document supported by the countries like the United States, Chile, and Colombia.
There's a general consensus among countries, and that's to stop the violence, to achieve better agreements in order to stop the murders.
However, the Nicaraguan foreign minister insisted that the country's situation goes beyond a couple of violent riots.
A coup d'etat and a constitutional breakdown are forming, as we have mentioned many times before.
Moncada also said the U.S. government and its allies are the ones behind the statement.
It is about following the guidelines of the U.S. Department of State and the Lima Group. They want to throw illegal accusations against the government of Nicaragua.
The OAS document insisted the Nicaraguan government consider different options to achieve the strengthening of democracy, hinting at early elections. However, the Nicaraguan foreign minister insisted that the government is ready to hold new peace talks.
The resounding victory of the President-elect of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, meant a hard blow for the Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI, that was the ruling party for almost 90 years, with just a few exceptions. Today, the future of the party is uncertain.
Mexican campesinos gathered in front of the Secretary of the Government, demanding funds that, according to them, were diverted to campaigns from the ruling party. Now, with just 4 months of Peña Nieto's administration, they say these practices contributed to the PRI's defeat.
I think this is punishment for the federal government led by Enrique Peña Nieto, and this is only part of the discontent.
A discontent shared by at least 42 million Mexicans who voted against the ruling party. This analyst believes the defeat means a hard blow for the party.
There will be deep internal divisions, and some are already calling to take the power away from the Atlacomulco group, the group of President Peña Nieto.
The scandals of fraud and corruption, and the poor handling of the resources designated for natural disasters, as well as the disappearance of the Ayotzinapa students, are believed to be some of the causes of their defeat in the elections.
One of the main mistakes from the PRI party was letting Peña Nieto take the decisions he took.
For now, all that's left of the party that managed to stay in power for 70 years, losing only 3 presidential elections, are these empty offices.
I see that a historical trend of the PRI will be to become a party that is increasingly less important in Mexican politics.
Their defeats have been only temporary before, but people believe this loss has changed the landscape, and this time it could be more permanent.
A new indigenous government has been set up in Mexico. Free Ayutla is the first recognized indigenous government in the state of Guerrero. This new government says it stands for the right to self-determination as recognized in the Mexican Constitution. The Free Ayutla government will rule in a territory formed by 140 communities. The Indigenous Assembly, its highest authority, has 280 seats, which will be occupied by an equal number of men and women. The money laundering scandal in Argentina surrounding President Macri's Cambiemos alliance continues. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
The scandal surrounding Argentina's government coalition, the Cambiemos alliance, involving a money laundering scheme during the 2017 legislative election continues. The governor of the province of Buenos Aires, María Eugenia Vidal, and President Mauricio Macri made public statements accusing the finance minister as the person responsible for the scandal, but didn't provide any clear information about the 1,000 people registered as contributors in Cambiemos' 2015 and 2017 campaigns who were not aware that they had donated money. Many donors even relied on social programs for those living below the poverty line. This is a controversial situation without any formal response from the government, in which several Cambiemos party members have denied donating money for the legislative elections in the province of Buenos Aires.
Thank you, Edgardo, for that report. A national demonstration is taking place throughout Brazil to demand the freedom of the former Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Our correspondent in Pernambuco, Andre Vieira, has more.
We are here in Pernambuco to follow the march organized by the Landless Workers Movement, and it will arrive to the city of Recife on Friday. The main objective of this march is to reinforce the innocence of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and also to confirm that Lula is the main presidential candidate for the most vulnerable and poor sectors of the country. The march demands his freedom. It's a march to tell the world that Lula is a political prisoner and that an election without Lula is a fraud.
We have more news after the break, but first, this report from our colleagues in multimedia. Stay with us.
And talk to a couple voters for us. Everyone's doing it for the first time and doing an amazing job.
Welcome back. The private sector in Barbados is worried about the recent spate of crime and they're asking the Prime Minister to intervene. The business sector says crime is undermining the country's core values and will negatively affect profits especially from the tourism sector. The Prime Minister in return said that she agreed that crime could not be tolerated.
Barbados cannot have 10,000 cases in the backlog, but realistically we can't treat the 10,000 at once either. But what we can treat to is all the murder cases and all the cases of shooting with intent, and then come down the hierarchy with rape, burglary, and robbery, or robbery, rape, burglary. And we've committed to that. And we've also committed to having every case from July 1st last year heard expeditiously, and then having every new case heard within 6 to 9 months.
And in Honduras, there are continued protests over mining concessions granted by the state.
In the village of Azacualpa, mining companies offered money to relocate a cemetery so they could continue operations. Villagers were among those marching.
We do not want more trees being cut. We do not want more contamination. We want respect for our life. We want our loved ones to be respected.
I have my family members, my dad, my mom, and 6 brothers, and they want to take them away in exchange for money. We are against that. We have the rights to live.
The authorities' excuse is that mining generates development. But until now, no community in Honduras has been lifted out of poverty due to mining.
They tell us this creates jobs. According to state figures, it generates 2,000 jobs. But those that work there only get paid $15,000 a year.
7 articles of the current mining law were declared unconstitutional among those mining in open air, yet the activity continues to be performed without any regulation.
We demand that a new mining law be approved in Honduras, that Honduras be declared free of mining like in other countries, such as Costa Rica and El Salvador.
For the residents of the communities, mining is a problem that has left many sick, while also contaminating water.
It is terrible because you cannot consume water, and your body can also be affected. You can carry diseases such as leprosy.
To date, there are more than 600 pending concessions in Honduras.
And in San Salvador, a social organization marched against the privatization of water resources. Our correspondent Inessa Alvalos has more.
Members of the National Alliance Against the Privatization of Water organized several road blockages and demonstrations in different departments across the country to demand the right-wing members of the Environment and Climate Change Commission stop the privatization and merchandising of water and guarantee the people free access to water resources. This is a continuation of month-long protests which have been taking place throughout the country.
And Jamaican authorities are looking into rationing water as drought conditions continue on the island. The Jamaican Met Office is also forecasting prolonged periods without rain in the coming months. Already, the Sugar Association of the Caribbean is reporting that drought conditions are having an adverse effect on the majority of regional sugar producers. The National Water Commission is saying that water levels in some dams are falling by 1% every day. In the Parliament, MPs have begun to request a special schedule to have trucks bring water into their communities.
For Portland, we have developed a trucking schedule for the entire parish for the period July to September, and we are seeking funding through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, as well as the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development. That is for parish, for Portland. And I'm suggesting, Mr. Speaker, to all my colleague MPs that they do the same.
A new video of a floating island of plastic waste in the waters of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic shows just how much damage is being done to our oceans. It was taken by the organization Parley for the Oceans. Now there's a major cleanup campaign underway. Now, according to Parley, over 500 people took part in clearing over 30 tons of plastic in a 3-day operation. There's another cleanup planned on the same beach for July 21st. Urban farming has become a source of food and employment for small producers in Venezuela. In Caracas, over 300 families receive crops at accessible prices thanks to this initiative promoted by the Bolivarian government.
This story begins anew every day at 5 a.m. in the heart of Caracas. Since 2008, families in Caracas have been learning the art of agriculture and fish farming. This urban agricultural production unit has the goal of solving the problem of lack of stock and higher food prices.
We have to be honest, our country is lacking in processed food products, but in our tables we never like squash, yuca, scallions or cilantro, because we produce them ourselves. Small urban farming is providing for us.
This concerted effort to generate alternative resources of production also includes universities, foundations for training, and the Ministry of Urban Agriculture of Venezuela.
We sell at a fair price for both the producer and the community. We do not speculate. We maintain a sharing process whereby we provide some producers with seeds and they help us by preparing the land for sowing. We highly value our interactions with the producers.
These producers also have fish tanks for the breeding of cachamas and tilapia.
I'm proud to be a campesina. Not everyone can say that they produce their own food, that they feed the fish that they will later eat. Not everyone can say, I'm a campesina, and I am beautiful.
During this distribution process, every 15 days, over 300 families are benefited in 20 out of the 22 parishes of Caracas.
We sow, we harvest, and we eat. We don't need to purchase anything on the streets where prices are sky high. 1 kilo of tomatoes can reach up to 1 million bolívares, so we'd rather produce our own food.
This socialist production unit, which has an area of 4,000 meters, not only guarantees the harvest of food as well as animal husbandry, but also a distribution process for nearby communities, which is backed by the Bolivarian government.
And we'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Spain's Supreme Court has announced it will withdraw the European arrest warrants for politicians linked to the Catalan independence referendum. Our correspondent in Barcelona, Joan Ortiz, explains what this means for the politicians currently in exile.
Spanish Judge Pablo Llarena did not like the decision made last week when a German court rejected the rebellion charges against Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont, saying there was no violence during the independence vote. Germany denied an extradition request from Spain that would have held a 30-year sentence. Germany said it would accept the charges of alleged corruption, and that would be a sentence of 5 years in prison. Judge Llarena is exerting all his energy against the leader and the referendum that failed to grant Catalan independence. Llarena has removed the European order of arrest. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he will stop trying to prosecute Puigdemont in Spain under rebellion charges, but he would have to find new ways to do it. The judge also removed the order against other politicians who are in Scotland, Belgium, and Switzerland. This means they can travel anywhere in the world with the exception of Spain, since an arrest warrant is still out for them here. After this, the political prisoners in Spain asked to be released based on the German court's decision. But the new Attorney General's office under the government of Pedro Sanchez will not release them or reduce their sentences.
And Russia's Prime Minister has proposed increasing the retirement age, sparking peaceful protests in the country. Our correspondent in Moscow, Hansel Oro, has more details.
The Communist Party in Russia is against increasing the retirement age, proposed by the country's Prime Minister. The project proposed that men should retire at 65 years old and women at 63 years old. People opposing this measure are protesting peacefully, as authorities aid the coordination of these mobilizations. No one was arrested during these demonstrations. People are also gathering signatures to reject the bill, although they need 2 million signatures for them to have an effect. The signatures will have to be verified by the electoral body in Russia.
As Pakistan prepares for its general election set for July 25th, we spoke with Farouk Tariq, one of the candidates from the Awami Workers' Party, a radical left party from Karachi.
And parties mainly contesting for the supremacy of the civilian government and also for the women's rights, labor rights, human rights, minority rights, and so on. And we're also speaking about the climate change and about the human development instead of the infrastructural development, which has been the main priority of the last government of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping started a tour of Africa, looking to strengthen trade with different countries on the continent. The Chinese president will first visit the UAE and then will head over to the African continent, with stops in Senegal, Rwanda, Mauritius and South Africa, where the 10th summit of BRIC member nations will take place. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisiotv.net/English. And we're also on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Talisio English, I'm Zoe Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
Quiero señalar frente a ustedes lo que es la moral de alguna prensa. Que no insistan como insiste el mercado.